Good morning, and as always, thank you for joining with me today. Do you remember that wonderful story that Jesus told about the young fellow who asked Dad for all of his inheritance? Supposing your 18-year-old son comes and says to you, "Mum and Dad, I know you're going to die one day and leave me a lot of money, but I'd like it now." How would you respond? And how would the young fellow respond if he in fact got the handout? What if you were in his shoes? What would you have done? Well, maybe we might just have done what the young fellow did. He blew it big time. It's party time and soon the bank is calling. He spent his fortune, ran up a credit card bill, burned his allowance, and he's hit rock bottom. Can you see him lying maybe in his one-bedroom flat? Now, I know the Bible doesn't say it's a one-bedroom flat. It does mention a pig pen. Whatever else is right down there. And he thinks, what am I going to do? And Jesus tells us, but when he came to himself, it's an amazing little statement here. Suddenly he knew it was time for him to take control of his life. He was on the wrong bus. But it's also a story of a father's love. And it's a story about a boy who suddenly realises his plan for life isn't working. He needs a new strategy. Do you remember when the children of Israel were in the desert? God had been feeding them with this stuff called manna. And then they entered the promised land. And the Bible says the manna ceased on that day. No more manna. Do you get the picture? For 40 years in the desert, they got manna. They got everything they needed. I bet they get tired of eating it every day. Maybe there was a recipe book, 101 ways to serve manna. But can you hear them moaning? Oh, not manna again. 40 years. But it kept them going and it met their needs. And God promised that they would be provided for. And they were. But on the very day that they were over in the promised land, they could provide for themselves. And the manna stopped. God says from now on it's up to you. It's time you took responsibility for yourselves. God loved Israel, but as soon as they were out of the wilderness, it was time for Israel to look after their own needs. You remember the story of the old farmer and his wife who were going into town in their old car? And she says, remember when we were young, how we needed to snuggle up to one another while we were driving? Why don't we do that anymore? And he said, well, I haven't moved. It's easy to move away from God. Sometimes there's failure in our lives and God's presence becomes a memory. Sometimes, like the children of Israel and that young man who blew it all in the far country, we need to get off that bus that's taking us in the wrong direction. And no matter how far we move away from God, as the story of the prodigal son tells us, God is always there to welcome us back. Again, thank you for listening to me and God bless you.